Okay, so as we dive right back in to things here, we're going to be coming up on game 2 with V3 taking on AXIZ Gaming. Excuse me. And a great first game to kind of open up the split on. A lot of fun, a lot of good action. Get to see a bit of the rookies in action, which is always kind of exciting, especially ones that are jumping in at the middle of the summer split, because you're at that point, if you're jumping in as a rookie in the summer split, you have less time to prepare for like world stages and things like that, but you're kind of almost guaranteed that roster spot. So
Right.
would be
Sorry. I'm still laughing from Twitter threads. Okay.
You're good.
So one thing that's interesting, we still don't actually know if we'll have Worlds this year, right? We don't know. We had MSI shortened. We don't know what the format will be if Worlds does happen and needs to change formats. Possible. So you've got a question, especially for a minor region. Like, you're very used to, you have to be the best to even get a chance at these international events, right? But we don't know, right? There's a chance that things could change and you'd have more of an opportunity for, even if it's not like the major international events, you could have more chances to play against potentially stronger regions if you can become a top of the table team.
Right, and not exactly like these teams are even the strongest in LJL, but definitely I think in Spring Split, we saw Sengoku come as close as they've ever been to beating DFM. Of course, the playoff finals, definitely DFM kind of asserted themselves, but Sengoku was able to pull out a series against them. They did sort of make DFM play through the losers bracket. So as far as does a god bleed, as DFM is kind of a like they posture themselves as in the LJL, opportunities arise, and definitely if any of these teams really wants a shot at moving far in the playoffs, Sengoku beat It's a sort of Sengoku beat DFM, and a lot of teams came close to beating Sengoku as well. So,
right, we see this a lot because a lot of the major regions actually right now have very stacked top of the tables or like a very set best team, right? So there's a lot of places where you see how having these really good teams and having their skill kind of not trickle down, but in a way kind of that to the lower level teams, and they'll rise up. You'll see like Mad Lions beat G2 in first round of playoffs last year to make them run the losers bracket.
Right.
Sounds a little familiar, right?
Yeah.
So there is the opportunity for upsets. It doesn't always have to be the same team winning.
Exactly. And definitely as we're going into V3's first game, V3, a team that did fairly well towards the end of the split, especially during playoffs. And let me double check my notes here, because I know that during playoffs V3 did end up going to round 3. They did play the losers match. They were beaten by DFM, but they were able to secure third place in the split last season. So this is a third place team, and sort of a little bit intimidating if you're AXIZ Gaming coming into this one, because you're coming off of a loss that, could have gone very differently if a couple plays went a little bit more in your favor. CGA pulled it out against AXIZ.
Right.
That being said, go ahead.
In my mind, I don't think AXIZ has anything to be ashamed of from the last game. They had good opportunities. They made good plays. But it was also a very even game, right? So you need to have the confidence after a hard loss like that to move forward.
Right, and it's that kind of we talk about it in the FGC all the time, is you need to have that sort of mental fortitude that you can drop a game, you can like mentally rally, and then you can come back strong. You can still You know, you can still fight, you can still work through everything, and come back mentally fresh for the next game. You don't have to worry about, you know, or you can't get discouraged at a loss like that and be like, oh, well, we're playing the third place team. You know, what chance do we have? That kind of mentality is gonna just really guarantee that you're not gonna be able to pull through on this series. You definitely want to be the team that's coming into this and saying, okay, we got a couple things we can clean up, but if we just clean those things up, opportunity for this game is definitely in our favor.
Right, and this is something we don't see very often in League of Legends, is coming legit 10 minutes off of a loss, you are going straight into another game with a whole new opponent. You need to have your strategy ready, right? Like, you know the schedule, obviously.
Right.
So you have to be ready for that, and that's something that doesn't happen in major regions aside from like best of threes, and that's against the same team. So
right, and you know, even in these kind of best of one formats, I almost feel like it's a little bit easier to kind of shrug off a loss, or you hope it is, at least for your team. You know, you hope that you're able to just kind of, you know, we've been talking a lot about the sort of like environment change and the mental change that goes into playing an online tournament at home. You know, you're in your house, things like that. So when, you know, you have that, you almost hope that you could treat it like a solo queue game, right? You know, you can almost say, well, all right, that was an unfortunate loss. Wasn't the best situation, but hey, we'll go next. We'll work on it. We'll come back strong, and you know, just roll right into the next game. You're hoping that AXIZ Gaming going into this game has that sort of mental fortitude, and I definitely think that, you know, against a team like V3 Esports, when it's the first game of the split, V3 has definitely V3 are the favorites here, and the other kind of edge that they have is they don't have any new players coming in. They kept the same roster. No new players coming up for them, and I believe, yeah, they did announce that their starting roster is going to be the same team that they finished the split on at the end of or losers finals in the playoffs. So, you know, comfortable team. Everyone's still on the same base. This is a team you've been scrimming with all along. This is a team you're going to play it out with. So definitely, you know, for the side of V3 Esports, you have that kind of comfort area. I definitely feel like AXIZ, one thing I did notice, and one thing that, like, I kind of, you know, when you see a new player, the first thing you want to look at them is you want to look at them critically. You want to kind of get an idea of where their head's at the start, especially in these early on first stage presence performances. Natsumi, I kind of felt like was playing off a lot on his own. And granted, to benefit, he did very well when he's, you know, sort of 1v3. He was still going 1-for-1 and zoning members, and it definitely handed AXIZ a decent amount of the fight. I like seeing that. I like seeing that he's able to do what he's trying to productively, but it always makes me worry when they're having that kind of solo play is, okay, but how do you play with the team environment? How are you, you know, working with everyone around you? Are you able to be productive in a team environment? Are you able to play for your team? Can you play these hardcore tanks in a pro play environment? You know, can you work with your team well enough to draft peel to have these successful team fights beyond I'm a Renekton, I'm a Wukong, and I'm diving your backline, you know?
right, like surface level and with the eye test, it might look like the right thing to do, but are you properly communicating that that's what you're trying to do to your team? Like, you think about some of the fights, and it's, if both teams understand that top lane is trying to dive your backline, then as the Renekton, you want to do it at a time that buys them space, right? Not at a time to defend from their own dive.
Right. There's a productive way to say, I'm gonna go kill their AD carry now. You know, you can't just sprint straight in and eat a Syndra stun, or even towards the later ends of that fight, you know, possibly, you know, when it was getting a little bit dicier for AXIZ, that happened to him. He got immediately hooked up by, he got immediately hooked up by Corporal and just kind of, you know, died off. He teleported in, got hooked, died, and wasn't able to add a whole lot to the fight, which, you know, not going to entirely say that was all his fault. You know, we don't exactly know what's going on in comms there, but it's definitely something to think about going forward, as V3 going to start it off with a Fiddlesticks ban.
The fiddle ban first right away.
I like the B1 Fiddlesticks ban. It's kind of.
I don't think we've seen a Fiddlesticks yet.
We've
Not off the top
no.
of my head.
I think we've seen one in LEC. I remember there was one, and I don't think it was during Summer Split. I think it was during I'm not going to be able to recall exactly when, but I know we have seen a Fiddlesticks at some point.
Well,
Either way,
something common. It's definitely a Varus ban.
Yeah, the Varus R1 ban there is a very very consistent ban. Is we're probably not going to be seeing a lot of Varus making its way through the draft. Is kind of a bit of a value pick that's going to be going away. And my stream is buffering again. I'm gonna lose my mind. Okay, let me just hit refresh here for you guys.
We see 2 mid lane bans next with Sinjo and LeBlanc.
Right. And with those 2 bans coming in, LeBlanc, again, like we always talk about, is just super popular in the LJL. And the Senna ban... Now, the Senna ban is one that I think is going to be also a ban that we see consistently going forward. Especially because a lot of the sort of like meta revolves around these brawly type of characters. You know, we had some all-star performances from Set, from Wukong, and even like pretty good performance from the Renekton. All of those champions, if you just have a Senna in the backline who's just kind of healing, throwing out poke damage, and keeping glacial slows on multiple members so that you can, your top laners can dog them down a bit easier.
It's also important to note the new build that Senna takes nowadays. She takes Frozen Mallet and a lot of tank. Grasp as a rune choice. So she's a much tankier ADC that's very hard to die for something like a Renekton and a Wukong.
Right, it's sort of that little bit tankier style, but offers a lot more, even more utility than Senna already does. But it looks like a little bit of a flashback to the spring split, as we're seeing Aphelios and Misfortune picked up immediately on the first couple rounds, and
it's the 2020 ADC special.
Yeah, that it is. And AXIZ hovering the Rek'Sai. I know we did see a lot of Rek'Sai games coming out from Hoglet, but goes for the meta pick with the Graves, who did manage to make it through the draft as V3. I always hate to say it right away, because you never know if they're just going to hover off of it, and there he goes onto the Nidalee. And this is an exciting jungle matchup that I always like seeing, is both of these junglers can kind of do quite a bit when they're ahead, especially with Nidalee being one of those early proactive junglers that farms very quickly and wants to get onto the map early on to try and take advantage of, you have some of the cheaper items in your build path if you don't want to go for the Lich Bane, but you even have that opportunity if you end up getting decently ahead. So
as we get bot lanes and junglers chosen for both teams.
Yeah, so now is a little bit of an interesting one where we're possibly, last game, like you were talking about then, we dug into the AD champ pool. There was a lot of marksman bans. Now, possibly a lot of opportunity for either mid lane or top lane to dig into their champion pools. And Jace going to be the first one banned away there.
That's an interesting one. Jace has been gaining some popularity with Phase Rush and just general. He's always been that lane bully you want top, but also extremely exploitable. So it's interesting to see him banned here.
Yeah, it definitely came up a bit in that, we see the matchup a lot. It usually kind of like files in under a lot of the poke comps that typically run a Jace into it. But with both Zoe now banned and the Lethality Varus banned away, not going to be able to get too far in. And Wukong also going to be making his ban entry here. And that is something that I predict going forward is going to be a lot more common, or is going to be less commonly seen, is we will definitely start to see Wukong on the first end of the ban. I definitely feel like we did see CGA having a great performance on it with Nap, and we saw how well it scales. So banning it away is definitely the good play, but surprised it made it through this early or this far in favor of the Thresh pickup by V3 and the Nautilus pickup by AXIZ.
Right, they seem to be prioritizing counter picks over what is just a stable solo laners for both teams. It would not surprise me. I think you're right that Wukong could definitely raise up in priority, but in the meantime, Ornn just goes completely uncontested as well.
Right, and I think one thing that we also are not seeing a lot in the LJL that is popular in other regions is the Soraka coming through. Now with Ornn locked in, there is an opportunity for that on the top side. We also see a lot of gangplanks typically coming in, but Paz saying allow me to Aatrox does offer a bit of that like forward, very red aggressive focus coming out on that top side of the map.
Aatrox also pretty immune to being bullied by the Ornn. It's a pretty safe lane. You never really have a ton of kill pressure on the Ornn, but you do have some. And that's something not every laner has into Ornn, so it's good. I like the Galio here.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's a strong mid pickup, but also Aatrox and Nidalee are both champions that are going to be leaping into the enemy team a lot. You're going to be sending them forward. You know, if Nidalee lands a spear, she wants to dive in so she can get the empowered Q, which is the like main brunt of her damage. Galio is a great complement to that, to be able to R them in. Galio's ultimate did receive a buff, I believe not this patch, but a patch or two ago. But it also helps with the Aatrox, who's going to be running forward. And the other thing I really like about this is, we've talked about how Ornn is a very strong tank that can be kind of hard to bully and push through. But a little bit interesting is when you have this very high damage AP jungler like a Nidalee, that's a great way to try to keep kill pressure higher onto a champion like Ornn. When you're splitting the damage between a lot of AD and a lot of AP, Ornn is a susceptible target. We typically don't see a lot of junglers playing around the top lane in the LJL, but it does open up opportunity to target him early on, because you can only itemize against one of them very reliably.
Right. And I am curious what keystone this Galio takes. We've been seeing a lot of spellbook for solo queue Galios, and they pair it with Nimbus Cloak, and it's kind of the same idea with Hextech, where since you're cycling so many summoner spells and you'll get speed boost, Galio can't flash W anymore.
Yeah.
But his move speed is still intact with W up. So you'll just have Galio charging at you, full speed, Ghost, Nimbus Cloak. With taunt, it's almost as effective as a flash.
Yeah, just giving that extra move speed now is a little bit hard to lock up a little, like the likes of Hoglet and Godaidu if he has the, Corki has the W up and if Graves has his dash up. But it definitely puts pressure on, and although, you know, we say, oh, you know, Graves has his E, he can dash out of it. It makes it harder for him to get in to do damage if he can't reliably E forward, because he's worrying about, you know, this Galio could easily throw down a summoner, have that move speed bonus like you're talking about, and, you know, Graves, not a very tanky champion. He does go typically the phase rush build where he goes Bork into, where you go Warrior, Bork, or excuse me, Warrior, Cleaver, and Death Dance, which does have a little bit of tankiness.
Right.
But definitely not something that can stand up to multiple, you know, multiple spears coming through from Nidalee, or even the likes of an Aphelios who has, you know, roots. You can chain CC targets to keep them, you know, keep them forward. And then once the fight starts going forward for the side of V3 here, it's going to go forward a lot harder with the, you know, with the Aatrox being able to bowl forward. Aphelios, not exactly the most mobile carry, but does back up his team very well. As far as, you're never going to be able to push back very hard because there's going to be Aphelios turrets, there's, you know, crescendums and everything that he can use to zone people very effectively.
Right, Gravitum slows.
Yeah, a lot of, you know, Aphelios speaks for himself in a lot of cases as far as everything that champion is capable of doing.
Right.
And definitely, I believe we did, if I recall correctly, Archer did have a number of games on Aphelios throughout the split, like towards the end of the split, even when Aphelios was kind of like falling off a little bit in popularity after a couple nerfs. I know the big one that a lot of people looked at was the Severum and Overheal nerfs, so he's not able to get as massive of a shield in the early game. I know that was like a big breaking point for his popularity, and I do remember Archer was still playing him through a lot of that.
Aphelios used to have a lot of potential to just be a lane bully, and they've really, Riot is really focused on scaling that back, but he still retains a lot of his tools and just his team fight potential to just completely take over fights, even if he's not the type of AD that like dives your backline. He doesn't have to.
Yeah, he's not flashing forward as often as he used to. You know, it's very you know, just like, all right, I'm an Aphelios. I don't have a whole lot of abilities early. I'm just gonna sit here and, you know, grab up my gold as often as I can. And I definitely feel like that sort of changes the dynamic, especially when teams like to rotate for Rift Heralds and move Aphelios around. Now Aphelios sort of moves to the focus of he likes just staying in the bot lane and picking up the waves while, you know, it's like, all right, we have to hand over Rift Herald, totally fine. I'm going to be in the bot lane, shoving this lane under turret and grabbing a couple turret plates.
Right, and sure enough, we do see Spellbook on the Galio, so a lot of 2v2 potential between the Nidalee and the Galio.
Definitely, and one thing that my eyes are immediately drawn to is on the side of AXIZ, Garaidu taking the Hail of Blades on Corki, which I do kind of like. You don't exactly have to work, you know, typically common is the Fleet Footwork. That's the most often taken rune on Corki. But into a champion like Galio, it's not exactly like you're going to be in a lot of situations where, you know, you're using Fleet to heal up from poke. Galio very all-in focused. So Garaidu kind of will have benefit of having those shorter trades with the Hail of Blades. And with no Aftershock to kind of protect Ace from taking shorter trades with him, Hail of Blades kind of punishes that pretty well. So I do like the dynamic that kind of creates there. And a late invade coming in from V3 here. They did walk across a ward without seeing it. So 3 members from AXIZ are rotating up here. It's going to be a smite fight on this one. Damage is going to be dispersed onto it. The smite goes the way of Boogie as he's going to go forward here, harassing Hoglet away. A good chunk and getting the red side out of AXIZ.
Just 3 different 1v1s as everyone finds their lane opponent and just fights them.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting situation to kind of like pilot through, where Natsume wants to come in to help his laner, but Paz is there and he's like, I can't face check through this. And same thing with Ace, he's like, I can't walk straight past Garaidu, I'll eat too much damage there. And an early smite from Hoglet ends up giving that one over to Boogie. It sets him behind a little bit. Now, the sort of nice thing is that he does have his blue side up, which is the more important side for junglers, so he is still able to hit 3 off of just 3 camping this, and will have decent, he can stay decent in XP just by cycling those few camps. But having complete buff control for Boogie and a faster clear speed overall on the Nidalee, might be able to kind of eke out a level advantage or 2. And that's sort of the same thing we saw in the last game. So possibly a little bit of jungle meta kind of developing of junglers looking for advantage in between their laners as Archer going to be trying to trade a bit of damage back. A decent chunk onto Corporal. Reyna with a hook. Very delayed, but ends up getting a bit more damage onto him. It's both supports going down to about a 3rd HP.
Overall, pretty even trade.
Yeah, definitely not bad. Reyna, I like the look there from the death sentence to, you know, you held it. It sort of looked like the fight was over, and then you can throw out the hook late. But eats a bit of damage in return for it as Ace looking for a snare, or excuse me, a taunt opportunity. Boogie goes forward here. Forces the flash from Garaidu. A great look as Boogie now going to be walking into Hoglet here. Ace is waiting in the wings, though. Spoogie's forced to jump away. Can't quite complete on that one, but it's going to be Natsume coming down. He's getting harassed by Paz on the way. He can't get away from the W chains. That is going to be Paz kind of helping out his team by just keeping Orn locked up. Don't let him near that fight. And overall diffusing the situation there.
I think phase rush actually super important for the Graves there and helping him get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Galio used his flash. He tried to flash taunt, but Graves, like, without even having to burn flash, was able to just walk away.
Yeah, and it's sort of a good look from Hoglet. A little bit risky because you know your mid laner just had to back, and it hadn't been long enough that Ace would have been able to back as well. You lost vision of him. You're sort of hoping that he's not backing close enough to Boogie that he can help out. But good awareness from Ace to just kind of keep an eye out for his jungler, stay nearby. And overall, diffusing the situation, but it's exactly what you want in the case of Boogie, as he's already up to level 5 this early on. 2-level advantage over Hoglet on the early parts of this game.
One thing I'm not 100% about is taking a call start on the Corki if you're gonna take Hail of Blades. It almost you talked about how Hail of Blades is good into the Galio, who is a melee matchup, right? You get decent zoning potential with that, but with the Cole, you're just gonna have no damage, and we see our Corki's flash forced almost instantly, right? First chance Galio has to engage on him, followed up by Boogie, flash burn, and no damage to really trade back. You have a Cole.
Yeah, and I don't even believe he burned a summoner spell. He still had teleport at that point. So it's a very replicatable scenario. You know, that was a quick taunt into quick damage. Boogie doesn't even have to burn his flash to get back out from under turret there.
Right, if Hoglet doesn't force the Galio to burn his flash, I didn't see 100% how that play happened. If Hoglet really was able to just walk out of the taunt, but that would have been easily a repeatable gank. And again, you have a Cole.
Yeah, and speaking of ganks, Hoglet's kind of finding himself in a little bit of a dance around the blast cone there, but not a whole lot of damage early on coming out from Hoglet, so Paz going to be able to walk away from that one as Boogie looking for an opportunity here on AXIZ, just forcing them away. Going to be able to cut the wave as Boogie's going very deep. The Galio ultimate comes in. No flay landed from Reyna as 4 members strong onto this bottom side. Should give Archer a decent amount of time to clear out that wave, possibly pick up a turret plate or two. While Hoglet looks to kind of get himself back up in levels by clearing out the top side of V3's jungle here.
It's a good job from the AXIZ bot lane to avoid the 4-man,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously you're still going to gain a lot for your Aphelios.
Yeah, there's still a CS advantage there. Of course, you want that first blood. If a hook actually ended up landing there by Reyna, he went for the flay into hook and wasn't quite able to secure either, but a risky situation there to be sure. But with V3's position, you got the first Drake. You don't have to worry too much, you know. You let Hoglet back up in levels. You still are retaining a 1-level advantage. Losing the 4 through 6 respawns on that side of the jungle is relatively important for Boogie, as it allows Hoglet a lot of room back in. But speaking of ways back in, Spear lands, Q is good, and the Electrocute comes down. That's going to be Boogie picking up first blood here. This is exactly like we said.
Ignite movement speed with the taunt gets him that kill.
Yep, the Nimbus Cloak plus that Unsealed Spellbook. And it was exactly like we said just moments ago, that was a very repeatable situation for the entire time that Gadaidu does not have flash. And that W cooldown is sort of... The W cooldown coming out from Gadaidu is very... It's a decently long cooldown. But even if Galio in the mid lane is faking it, even if Ace does not have his jungler there, if he eases forward and starts putting up his W, Gadaidu has to W away from it. He has to dash away. He has no choice in the matter because, like we just saw, if he gets taunt, it's curtains. There's nothing he can do at that point. So for Gadaidu, he has to respect every engage opportunity from Ace, which makes this lane a little bit dicey for him. And speaking of engage opportunities, Ace looking for one once again. Spear goes wide, and package forced out from Garairu to dodge out on one more gank as Flash comes back up, so a little bit of relative safety returned to him.
It was a relatively safe position. There wasn't a lot of danger. Your biggest danger was the Flash ultimate, and they still got, or Flash taunt, and they still got package out of it. V3 is just abusing this mid lane matchup to the maximum potential.
Yeah, and definitely, I think Boogie as a jungler is one of the in what my opinion one of my favorite junglers to watch in the LJL. I remember, as I say that, Hoglet maybe finding himself the better end of Boogie here. He has the ultimate, which can burn Boogie down if he hits a stray rocket. Hoglet could easily find an ultimate that knocks him down, but not quite able to secure enough damage to get that one done.
The nidalee damage is already so absurd.
Yeah, already completed that jungle item. Definitely probably has a decent back. Plus, having that support item available to your inventory much cheaper, but going to be going all in. A good flash from Paz, dodges out of the Call of the Forge God, and Natsume. One flash force gives him a little bit more relative safety in this lane, as Hoglet's going to help him shove the lane in here. As I was going to say earlier, Boogie is one of my favorite junglers in the LJL to kind of watch because he has a great eye for tracking the enemy jungler. One thing we did see is very early on in the spring split when V3 actually took a game off of DFM, it came down to, I believe Boogie was on Elise, and it was into an Olaf. And there was, excuse me, it's Boogie not going to let me get a word in edgewise, finding a huge chunk onto Garairu there. But what I'll try to make it quick for you, Boogie, I promise. Is one thing I did enjoy is he was tracking the Olaf very well, but he was doing it beautifully where he would constantly burn an Olaf ult cooldown, burn his flash, and then secure an objective off of it just by tracking his pathing all the way through the jungle, and then just finding him at one point, forcing out a summoner spell with Ace, and then that loses all ability for the enemy team to contest. DFM actually lost a lot of the early game to that from V3 Esports. And you can see almost the same thing happening with Boogie, where he's been tracking Hoglet down, keeping an advantage up, and from there is able to aggress onto the mid lane because he knows he has pressure. You saw 4 people strong rotating onto this bottom side, aggressing on the blue side of AXIZ Gaming. And now you're losing a little bit of the level advantage, sure, but what you've gained is 2 Drakes. You lost 1 Rift Herald, but you have First Blood over to Boogie. You have so much pressure accumulating in this mid lane so that Garairu is not able to farm as reliably as you'd like. The pressure he emits from forcing out cooldowns and keeping just great tabs on Hoglet is really coming up large for them on this.
Right, Boogie almost playing out just the moral of your story in real time.
Yeah, and as I say it, Natsume going to be the target of a gank here. Paz coming in to tank this one up, and it just gets burned down so quickly. Aphelios also being burned down here, not able to escape from the bullet time due to that lantern. Archer, heal is not enough for him. He's going to go down. Graves picking up that kill. Now they have a little bit of time on the bottom side here. And a little bit unfortunate that they were forced to drop the Rift Herald onto the mid lane. You do get a gold spike into Garairu's hands, but it would have been a great opportunity to drop it here as Ace going to get yoinked in to grab up some of this CS. As meanwhile on the top side, it's sort of a 1-for-1 opposite ends of the map.
And almost instantly after you make the Rift Herald play, you force, as we have a replay, but he forces flash for flash on the mid lane, and that's always going to benefit the Galio who has the unsealed spellbook and can just cycle summoner spells and pair them with Nimbus Cloak. You lose nothing by burning flash 100%.
Right, and this is just a beautifully done combo from Archer. Hoglet is almost not even needed for that one. It was sort of Archer maybe greeding out a little bit to try and pick up those last few minions. He's like, oh, well, I have Lantern available, but very, undeniable depth charge into a free hook at that point by Corporal is a lot of time knocked up where you're just eating bullet time damage. So definitely needs to be a little bit careful of that going forward here. As Archer now picking up his slack in the mid lane, happy to pick up a bit more gold wherever he can find it. And one thing that we didn't talk about earlier is we did see, this is the patch, or we're coming up on the patch where the Zeal items are going to be changed, and that's sort of...
That is this patch.
Or that is this patch, excuse me. And we haven't seen a whole lot. I don't think it's one of the most impactful changes, but what we do tend to see is it's a little bit nicer of a spike, and especially for champions like Misfortune, who are already very reliable on their move speed to kind of navigate around team fights. And for Archer in this scenario, who needs that extra move speed to be following up the likes of Paz and Boogie on Aatrox and Nidalee respectively, the extra move speed definitely comes in handy, so...
Right, but it's important to note that most ADs, especially the most meta ones, don't pick up Zeal items until third-ish items. So
Yeah.
Aphelios is one of the only ones that takes a Runan, or yeah, it's a Runan, so a Zeal item, second item.
Yes.
I don't know if other ADCs are adjusting to that, because usually an MF would go Essence Reaver into IE and then get the Zeal items. You don't feel those buffs until late.
Yeah, you want those raw AD right away, especially because the bullet time scales so well with it, but pause. Gonna be aggressed on by Hoglet here once again. Corporal is coming in, the depth charge goes down. He will have a hook opportunity, but pause safely getting behind the turret, and I like that E there to make sure that if he throws the dredge line, it's not gonna be able to land on anything important. But Boogie finding his way onto Natsume. He's face checking a bush there. Boogie looking for a bit of damage, finds it onto Natsume. One spear landed. He might flash for this one. Flash WQ. The damage is good, and once again, Boogie aggressing onto this Ornn, punishing the lack of MR that he has, will give Ace first turret on this top side.
It's funny seeing both junglers trying to perform the same thing, right? They're both trying to be super aggressive on opposite sides of the map. We've seen it time and time again. They're just forcing on opposite sides of the map to make something happen. And each time so far, Boogie has come out on top. That's the second time Ornn has died top lane, once under his turret. This time, under his tier, damn near in front of his tier 3 turret.
Yeah, in between the two, you're taking a flash with you from Boogie's end, but you're burning your own flash and still going down. And that's sort of...
build. Ornn has half a Sunfire, a Bramble to deal with the Aatrox. You have nothing for the Nidalee, who's 3-0, who can almost one-shot you. You're supposed to be the tank.
Yeah, it's gonna be, especially because you're the one who needs to tank those spears, or you're closest to them. Speaking of spears, almost finding one on the Hoglet there. As Rift Herald spawned up here, is going to use that pressure to move towards that Ocean Drake. And with Aphelios, it's very hard to kind of walk in on this team comp. Nidalee does enough damage to burn down the Drake with Paws in tow, but it looks like V3 are turning for the fight. The Drake goes down as Corporal goes golden. Ace is forced to kite away there. A spear lands, and as I say that, Aatrox is going forward now. Ultimate comes in, but the bullet time is huge. Ace barely going to avoid onto that one, as now Natsume trying to run away. Death Sentence not going to land, but the spear will, as Natsume going to be going down once again to Boogie there. Blinking HP
no one
bars.
dies. Just kidding.
Yeah, definitely very low on multiple accounts. The bullet time from Union actually came up huge in that fight, but it just wasn't quite enough. And Boogie, with the advantage he has, those spears are starting to hurt, and it's not in, you have to start respecting that damage. But is it worth buying magic resist? This is sort of an interesting part for AXIZ to be in, where you don't want to buy magic resist for a Nidalee or for a Galio. You know, it's more of a tanky champion where you don't want to have to buy this. But eyes on Boogie here. The spear immediately lands up there, and a beautiful follow-up from Paz forces all of the members back up. But as they try to funnel in to follow, Union with that beautiful ultimate, and it finishes off with just one last spear to find Natsume. Could have been a lot worse for both teams if one step was out of place. If Ace is just in there a moment longer for that bullet time, he goes down. If any of the members of AXIZ didn't have an escape up towards that top side, with Graidu using the Flight of the Valkyries to get away from that one, both of them easily could have been going down there.
Look at AXIZ's items. They have nothing to deal with Boogie, who just finished a Lich Bane. Literally just finished it. And I think the one with most magic resist is the Graves, who has the Aegis for his death stance.
Is going immediately into the death stance to pick that one up. And that was something we talked about a little bit earlier, where that's the beautiful thing about Nidalee, and especially in this like most recent meta, is she has two options available to her. You can go this build, which is the more damage oriented build, or the support item one. But Hoglet, looking for a bit of a scrap with Pause, has to be a little bit careful here. Knows he has teammates waiting in the wings, but Boogie is on rotation already. A spear is going to be able to barely be dodged out on by Hoglet. Uses the ultimate for a little bit of extra movement there. Very close. And I gotta say, Hoglet, a little bit of an interesting scrap to try and take there. This guy who's gonna use the package to fly all the way in here. And Pause is just deep in the AXIZ territory for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure why he was so aggressive for that blue buff, but ends up going down for it.
Sometimes you just want a 1v3 for a blue buff.
Somewhat feeling the Aatrox builds of old, or the Aatrox of old, right? Where you can just force in, you can take fights wherever you want. Not the same Aatrox that he once was, unfortunately.
Right. We were talking about how useless Ornn's build is against Nidalee. It's pretty good against Aatrox. Aatrox is probably bored.
In isolation, definitely Aatrox, not exactly one of the champions you want to be. Aatrox versus Ornn 1v1. You still might need a 4-0 Nidalee to help you out on that one.
I'm happy for AI here. He's starting to read the room a bit.
And now, as we're starting to see a couple items being completed, the big one that I always look towards immediately is Godaidu. Getting that Trinity now. This is where every item afterwards really ramps up Corki's damage, because you have the Trinity, which adds a lot of damage. You have Mortamana, which means you can keep slinging out rockets. You have decent poke. But having the extra damage from your auto attacks, and then it starts to get amplified by crits, this is when Corki really starts to come online. The question really is, with Corki being one of the lower range marksmen, it's difficult for him to walk up to this comp. Ace can easily E forward, get a W off. Pons can easily dash forward, start his combo up, and you have to be worrying about dodging spears, dodging hooks. Anything like that is detrimental to Godaidu, so he's definitely going to be looking for a rapid fire cannon as early as he can possibly get it, but it's a bit risky for him to walk up and get the amount of damage out that he needs to, unless Natsume is able to find a good ultimate to kind of buy him enough space for that damage, as Natsume is going to eat a spear up there. Ocean Drake spawning up here. Soul point for V3 here, and a lot of vision control on this Ocean.
What do? You sacrifice the turret here. AXIZ needs to contest.
Right, and you have to kind of give that one up. Reyna's going to find a hook just to stall out for now. The Drake is going down. They will be able to pick up Ocean Soul before this fight goes anywhere. Paz goes golden, has the ultimate up, but is not going to be able to heal up enough in time. It's 1-for-1 so far. A great W lands his way onto Unyan. It is going to force the retreat out. Boogie's eventually going to fall, going very deep for the misfortune, but overall, V3 is going to walk away the better end of this fight, and Ace on the side of V3 Esports, as they're going to march their way over to the Baron with the time that they have. Boogie happy to throw away his lead a little bit in exchange for now the Aphelios carry coming online.
I think we said at the start of this game that Aphelios is not the carry that's going to be flashing in the backline. I take it back. When you get a 3-man taunt, flash behind it, just kill them all. That's how it works. Right.
Go forward there. You have full carte blanche on the rest of that team. You fear nothing at that point. And now V3 Esports going to sneak away or get away with this Baron. You have Ocean Soul, you have Baron, and you have a 7k gold lead in your hands. This can be a very quick game close for AXIZ if they're not able to find a solid fight here. We'll watch this back one more time. So Reyna and Ace doing a great job to just stall out, buying time while Boogie's able to finish off the Drake. Paz goes golden, and you have the ultimate, you do what you can to buy space, but look at Boogie's play here. The ultimate buys so much space. The W taunts 3 people as all of them are coming in. Archer flashes over the wall to try and just clean up everything, finds his way onto Godaidu as well. And that is just a quick way to end that fight. Beautiful play from Ace to find that taunt there.
Ace flashed, forced 2 or 3 flashes, and was still able to hit a 3-man or taunt.
Yeah, I believe he had 2 different Nimbus Cloak procs between, or opportunities with his flash, and I believe he burned a different summoner spell. I think he had heal at the time, if I'm not mistaken. But definitely, all of that movement is exactly like you said, where you can just see the potential. Once you're in as Galio, you're getting these value taunts. Feels much like the flash plays of old.
Unyan definitely felt the 80 carry life. He flashed out and was just run down into a taunt.
Yeah, he was on the fringe case of it. It was a little surprising he got hit by it, if I'm being honest, but...
That's what the movement speed will do.
Exactly. It just is that little extra area of deception as Archer, feeling himself a bit, is walking all in onto Garaidu. Uses the package to dodge out on one more taunt. But now Ace is just able to walk forward. They have the Baron. You have Paz on the top side, who now doesn't even need to fight Natsume. Natsume may be full armor, but Paz really doesn't even mind. He's here with Baron. He's here to push in waves. He just needs to keep your major team fight tool away from your team.
This is what Boogie's early aggression has enabled. Your Aphelios is 100% online. He's able to carry fights. The Galio's just doing what he's been doing the whole game.
Right, an item up on Unyan and double zeal taken up. Paz dodging out on an ultimate, has an opportunity here. They're engaging on this one hard, but here comes a Galio ultimate. Natsume, very sad about that one, knows that there's not a whole lot of opportunities left for him. It's very difficult to fight into an Ocean-souled Aatrox, especially with a Galio ultimate coming in. AXIZ kind of know that this is curtains for them as they're walking down onto the first Nexus turret. Looking for an opportunity. Ace not going to be able to walk all the way in there. But next wave is here. Corporal finds a dredge line, but it's not on anyone important. Dragging in the Garaidu as the Unyan as the death sentence drags him up on in. Hoglet forced to back away into the fountain. Garaidu cannot walk close enough to do damage. Flays him out of it. Archer not even concerned with him. Just able to clean that one up in a clean game from V3 Esports to scoop up their first win of the LJL Summer Split 2020.
Even the minions knew it was over as they drag in the Nautilus and enable the collapse to end the game.
Yeah, it was not a pretty one from AXIZ. Some moments where those fights looked doable, definitely decent play, but it felt like every opportunity that V3 had to make a play, it happened. Unyan especially, Ace especially, just coming up huge. I feel like Unyan was sort of the highlight for AXIZ there. Got out a lot of decent damage, was able to buy a decent amount of space, and the bullet time for doing damage. But Ace, every playmaking opportunity he had, won him out, and Boogie had such a control of the early half of this game that there was nearly nothing that it felt like AXIZ could do. You're losing out all pressure from the Graves, which is supposed to be a pressure early champion. You don't have any aggressive patterns that worked very well on the top side. You had some plays that worked on the bottom end of things, but it was always 1-for-1. It was never like AXIZ were getting a hard victory out. It felt like everything was, we're going 1-for-1 here, or we're just doing this because we need to get something to punish them, and it was never a strict win on the side of AXIZ.
Right, and we usually don't talk about setting tanks behind, but that was easily the saddest Ornn we have ever seen. He was 0-5-2, had one item in a garage shop.
Yeah, just those kind of off-ended items, nothing that really is like I got this, I got this Bramble Vest, I also have a Negatron cloak sitting here, and I got, it's nothing that adds up to a whole lot in the face of, I have a Nidalee throwing spears at me, I have an Aatrox just beating me down.
At that point, you were dove early in the game under your turret, easiest dive of their lives, and then you dove again with a flash Nidalee, basically solos you out. Like, poor Ornn, just couldn't do anything that game.
Yeah, and especially, that's sort of the point where especially post that, like, it was around maybe like 15 to 17 minutes where at that point, Ornn needs to start being in every team fight. He needs to be the ultimate that is starting things off, getting the team going and moving in, but there was never really an opportunity when you can't be the tank you want to be. You can't walk up that far, because if you eat a taunt, you're gone, and so is any member standing behind you. So I don't even think we saw Natsume able to get an ultimate off that really counted in any of those plays. And Boogie, of course, getting the interview here, and rightfully so after a clean play on the Nidalee. Going forward here, you know, one of the things I do want to mention is, of course, like we've been talking about, these new players coming up from these different tournaments, from either play-in tournaments or open tournaments or from scouting grounds. Natsume, putting him on a tank, it kind of was a rough one for him, and decent performance on the Renekton, kind of got bullied out on the Ornn, so hopefully, you know, he'll be able to rally this. You do want to see him capable early on, but it's always kind of a hard one to start off 0-2 in the split like that. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break before the next game starts up. For those of you turning in, like I said before, my name is Dr. No. This is Reaper Meister alongside with me doing the LJL broadcast.